Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Crystal Sikes is the owner and operator of Lady Savage LLC. She is passionate about helping women overcome obstacles when it comes to health and fitness. She provides her clients with one-on-one nutrition, fitness, and personal growth services. Crystal has been on a ketogenic diet for years and ate a meat-based diet throughout her entire pregnancy with their first child, Rigel, aka Baby Savage, and was back at the gym just weeks later. She is an inspiration to meat-based women who want an alternative to the recommendation of eating a standard American diet before, during, and after pregnancy. She and her husband, Robert, who has appeared twice on Boundless Body Radio on episodes 107 and 277, are the owners of the Keto Brick, a ketogenic-friendly, high-quality performance bar that is totally shelf-stable and provides a very high amount of energy from dietary fat. Krista also runs her coaching business where she helps her clients with their nutrition and workout programs, which you can find online at www.ladysavage.com. You can also find Crystal on Instagram at the.lady.savage. Crystal Sikes, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it was amazing to host Robert. He's also hosted me on the Keto Savage podcast, which was really fun to be hosted on. But now we finally have the true star of the show. You are a super mom. You are a super mom. I got to witness that firsthand at KetoCon in Austin a few months ago, and you were all over the place chasing down Rigel. It was a blast to watch you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast being a mom. He just turned a year and it's been a whole bunch of roller coasters, but all wonderful for sure.
That's amazing. You are the type of parent that makes me want to be a parent. Like some people talk about how miserable they are, how they never sleep, and like all of these like negative kind of connotations. And the two of you, along with, your extended family, who's also at KetoCon, just seem to like kind of make it work and accept the challenges. And, you have things going on. And like you said, lots of ups and downs, but for the most part, it just seems like really enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. We decided to wait. Like we were 30 when we had him, and we were just like, this is the time. Like we kind of planned things out. We specifically waited, and it was like, there is no perfect time, but well planned is always good. And our lives are crazy. Our lives are kind of go, go, go. And we had some people, some of our friends who are like also in the space, they're like, you either just do it and your kid comes with you, or you stop doing all the things and you kind of, start to fall back and trickle in life. And we don't want to fall back and trickle. So here we are just doing all the things with baby Rigel, and he's doing just fine.
That is amazing. I can definitely vouch for his health. He is amazingly healthy. He was always going to be healthy. We have probably talked about Rigel more on the show than we talked about anybody else. Baby Savage, I feel like, was the most anticipated baby in the low carbohydrate world for like generations.
That's funny.
And yeah, just watching him kind of crawl around. Has it been interesting to understand like how to feed a child?
Yeah. So there's so many different ways of doing it. Like some people start with purees. Some people start with, whole foods, like a baby-led weaning type of thing. But I've noticed that there is no place for someone like us to go, because there's a ton of fruit. There's just like a whole bunch of grains, and there's corn, and there's this and there's that. A lot of things that I didn't specifically want to introduce to him. We did more of a baby-led weaning type of protocol for Rigel, but we did mostly just meat based, and then we added in vegetables a little bit later once his stomach kind of was able to handle those a little better. But I did notice it was really hard to find anyone who really was doing what I wanted to do, and so it was kind of like, we're just going to jump in and do it.
Was it pretty easy for you to be intuitive around that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think you kind of know. He didn't have any teeth in the beginning, so it was like anything real soft and easy. So we started with like bone marrow, and then we did just egg yolk, and then we slowly started cooking the eggs a little bit more, and then just like the meat, I wouldn't like puree it, but I ground it pretty finely, and just blend it together with some organs and things like that. But you can kind of tell what textures they like and don't like as soon as it goes into their mouth. And the fun part is the first couple of months that they're eating or having fun with food. They really are just playing with it. The point is not specifically for them to be eating a ton of food. It's just for them to kind of get used to textures and the process of meats and different types of foods, and allowing that microbiome to grow as well. But the breast milk is going to be the primary source of energy and fuel and growth and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun in the beginning with the food, because you can just give them a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and whatever they hate, you either don't give it to them again for a little while and then try it again later.
That's amazing. How much time is he spending in the gym? Like, is he lifting weights a few hours a day?
Yeah, definitely 2 hours a day minimum.
Nice. Yeah, that does not surprise anybody at all. No, he was just a super happy baby. He didn't seem to be overly fussy. He just kind of had good energy and was smiley most of the time. I don't know what his temperament is like when, I wasn't around, but for the most part, he seemed like he was very well behaved.
Yeah, he's a super happy baby. I mean, I think both Robert and I are like, man, we just got so lucky, I think, because he's just so happy all the time. He has 7 teeth now, and he did not have like any teething experience really, like maybe one somewhat rough day where he just didn't nap, but then that was it. So he's just been super, super easy. But I do think that this kind of like having him on this diet does actually help with the teething. I know that sounds silly, but if you think about it, teeth get inflamed when it's coming through the gums. And if they have an anti-inflammatory diet plus the breast milk, it's going to keep the inflammation down. So kind of surprises me, but also doesn't surprise me that he hasn't had any issues with that.
Yeah, totally. When you say lucky, like that may have been part of it, but I think such a high amount of having, a well-behaved child comes from their diet. I think about, my childhood and the foods that I was eating. I'm sure yours was probably about the same, like trying to survive and go to high school on peanut butter jelly sandwiches and cold cereal, like, wasn't great. I would love to have had the opportunity to eat the proper foods. Not that our parents didn't do the very best they could, and they were just following, the advice that they were given. But it would be cool to like reimagine your life from little Rigel's kind of point of view and being fed the right foods from the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly why we do what we do. And people are like, well, what are you going to do when he's older and he can make his own choices, or he wants to just defy you? And I'm like, then I gave him the best start that he ever had. And he can never say, I wish my parents would have, he will know that we did the best that we could. And if he wants to go and, do whatever he wants to do, then that's fine. It'll be teenage Rigel and we'll figure it out then.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, we also have to bring this up as well. Naming your child Rigel, I think, is the most poetic, perfect name. Can you tell the listener how you came up with Rigel?
Yes. So actually, his first name is actually Robert, but he is the 4th Robert in the Sikes family. So there's Robert, his dad, and then his grandpa, and then there's little Rigel. But we were like, man, we can't call him Robert. Like there's already a Robert, his grandpa, and then Bob as his dad, and then Robert. And I was just like, I can't call my baby Robert and my husband Robert. That's just weird. So we were thinking, well, let's just, give him a middle name that we can call him by. And we were thinking, and Robert's, my husband's middle name is Orion, like the constellation, and Rigel is the brightest star of that constellation, Orion. So it's pretty cool. You can kind of look up in the night sky and see them almost every single night, and they're both up there just shining bright. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That makes me so happy. I was so glad that I was able to see Rigel. It looked like he was in a little baby backpack that Robert was walking out with. So nice to see him as well. Knowing Robert, I'm assuming he's going on some like 50-mile walk somewhere with the baby.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
We just launched that the Bell's Brownie Batter Brick. And so they're packaging out there. So Robert's watching Rigel for me, and he has him in a little carrier while he packages.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, I asked Robert this question. I loved his answer. I'm going to ask you the same thing. What does it mean to be savage?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it means, oh gosh, wow, you got me. I think mine's probably going to be a little different than Robert because I'm got the feminine side on me. But I think it's to be aggressive in all things that you do, not meaning crazy or, bad, but just aggressive in attacking life and just having those senses of growth and development and building yourself up and just going at everything in life with all that you have. And never being afraid to just not back down. And, I feel like anytime someone tries to do something different or out of the ordinary or just better for themselves, a lot of people try to bring you down. And I think, just being like, when I made Lady Savage, my point was to bring in the female aspect of things, but also give those women more of a backbone so that they can go do the things that they want to do. The moms that are so busy working on their children and their husbands and things like that, and just helping them to build who they are so that they can go do all the things and just build every aspect of their life to a degree that they are happy. They're bringing more to the world than they're actually taking to.
It's a pretty wonderful answer. Thought I had you stumped for a second, but you came up with a great answer. No, I like that. I kind of think of it as the same thing. It's almost like an intentionality, right? Like you're not trying to tear somebody's neck out, but you still want to be intentional. And like starting businesses like you have, and all the different ways that you help women step out of their shell, I think is a great way to look at that. You and I were talking offline, and I kind of commented to you that it's one thing to talk about women's health. Especially when it comes to things like hormones and when it comes to things like pregnancies. It's another to actually put your money where your mouth is and go through it the way that you did. And I love the way that you guys documented your story, all the ups and downs. You were very frank with it. It was, I believe, once a trimester, you were popping into the Keto Savage podcast. I would always get so excited every 3 months when I saw that episode was coming up. It was fantastic. And so I really want to pick your brain on some of that stuff today. But before we do, let's talk about your story through health and how you ended up finding, this whole entire world of low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets. You have a story of really like healing disease. Can you tell us a little bit about what you had going on?
Yeah. So, years ago, I've been keto for 7 years now. I was dealing with a lot of gastric issues, and I had seen so many doctors. It was kind of ridiculous at a certain point, and I was really at the point of wanting to give up when I got diagnosed with gastroparesis and slow transit colon. That was not fun. So with that, they had me on a pure liquid diet. At that point, we have tried everything. We'd had high fiber, we had, all different kinds of things. And at this point, like the only thing that was working for me was just drinking liquid. So lots of like protein shakes with fruit and things like that. And Robert actually was doing keto for bodybuilding, and he was like, "Hey, you should really try this thing that I'm doing." And at that point, like keto had not taken off. So I had no idea what he was talking about. Like it sounded crazy, just off the wall. You're wacko. So I said, well, I guess I'll give it a shot. And so I did. I tried it for, I think it was like a month or something. And I was like, this is miserable. I don't want to do it. I can't have my cookies and my this and that, even though I was supposed to be on a liquid diet, you sneak in this and that. And then I actually went back to what I was doing prior, and I got worse. And I thought, okay, I didn't feel well, but maybe I felt better than I do now. So I tried keto again. And that time we really modified things. That we kept in a lot of liquid, and I started keto with actually doing shakes and like putting avocado and cream cheese and things like that in there. And then slowly over time, I started to feel better and better and better. And it really did take me months to feel better and better and better. And then finally, I think it was 2 years into it, I had another scope done in my, I had both a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and the erosion and the discoloration and everything that was going on in there before was gone. They were like, it looks beautiful in there. I'm like, I feel great, and the gastroparesis and the slow transit, that probably will never really forever go away. Every once in a while I have a small flare up, but it is nothing compared to what I had before. And I really just keep it at bay with diet and exercise and things like that. And it's truly why I stay keto. A lot of people are like, man, I don't know how you can stick to that. Don't you think that that's too restrictive? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, because I feel like I got my life back. When you're that sick and your gut is messed up, you also get really depressed, and you get to a point where you're just like, I don't want to get out of bed. I feel worse once I get out. I'm just a shell of a person. And So yeah, it pretty much, like, I hate to say, like, it gave me my life back and to be so cheesy, but it really did. Like, it changed, my outlook, and it helped me to feel like there was something at the end of the tunnel, and feeling better and better every single month. It just made it worthwhile to continue going.
Yeah, that's amazing. It may seem restrictive, but all that other stuff what you were dealing with was absolutely restrictive. I
Yes.
don't think it's a huge sacrifice to continue eating this way and know that you might have to do so for the rest of your life to not have to deal with digestive issues. I never really had much in the way of digestive issues, but everything that I've heard with people that do say it's absolutely awful.
Yeah, it is absolutely awful because there's nothing you can do about it. It's just in your stomach. You can't, like, just let it do its thing. Like, you have to eat. So it was like I ate and I felt terrible, and I didn't eat and I felt terrible. So it was like, you have to eat, but how do you eat the right thing, and how much do I eat, and this, that, and the other. But now that I know exactly, like, what foods really upset my stomach, or what foods to eat more regularly, things like that, like, it's really not an issue. Maybe if I eat out or something like that, I might have a little bit of something. But for the most part, I've got it down to where it's like, I have no issues at all. And I eat a ton now. Back then I was hardly able to eat anything just because it hurt so much. And now I'm all about the fuel.
Nice. That's amazing. How was that impacting your relationship? Because you mentioned Robert, you guys are just starting to date for the very first time, weren't you?
Yep. So Robert was really big into starting up the businesses and things like that. And I was really sick all the time. And it was kind of interesting. I actually think back and I'm like, why would he want to be with me? Like, I feel like I was a miserable person. I must have had something good about me at that point. But I really do think it got better. I also ended up getting off of hormonal birth control also. And find that also can mess up your gut as well, but it can also mess up some of the hormone fluctuations that you have, your mood, a whole bunch of different things. So I think between, getting off the hormonal birth control, fixing my diet, things like that, it made me a happier person. It made me a more confident person, which in turn helped me to be a better person to be with. I think Robert enjoyed me a little bit more when I was happier.
Well, when I interviewed him, he said that you were the first like legit like girlfriend he'd ever had, and
Yeah.
so yeah, he didn't even have anything to compare it to. So there you go.
He's like, oh, this is what it's like. Great.
That's amazing. And when we talk to him and hear all the struggles and challenges he's had to overcome, we know that you have had to go through so much and overcome there. It really does just make you stronger on the other side. And it's really cool that you're now kind of sharing that message. I do want to go back to something you said, fiber. I'm sure they were trying to shove fiber down your throat. Was that helping at all? Was it hurting it or making it worse?
So one doctor that I had was adamant that I take fiber. He's like, just pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And then the next person that I went to, that's who I found the diagnosis with. And they were like, stop taking any fiber, like, just remove it from your diet because it's just blocking you. It's causing more buildup in your intestines and you already aren't emptying as you should. So at that point, I really just cut all of it out. I did keep some vegetables and things in there, but for the most part, now I don't have any fiber really. Every once in a while I'll have some vegetables, or there's a little bit in the keto bricks and things like that. But yeah, the fiber is just a killer. It just added so much bulk and just kind of filled up my stomach and intestines and wasn't really giving me any nutrients that I needed.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I'm familiar with your story, so I know how you're going to answer this, but intuitively, I would think anybody with digestive issues would probably thrive on a carnivore diet. We mentioned meat-based and animal-based in the introduction, but you have had experiences with carnivore diets that did not necessarily go that great. Can you talk about your experience on a carnivore diet and why you don't do that?
Yeah. I will start off by saying that I love carnivore for so many people. Like Robert practically he does like meat and then bricks. But I really wanted it to work for me. And I feel like it's really beneficial for a lot of different people. But when I've tried it several times. I tried it with high fat, I've tried it with high protein, and then I tried to do it just intuitively. And it just did not, each time I tried it, it did not go well. I got super bloated. And I just had more stomach pain, and I'm really not sure what the cause is of that. And I tried a lot of ground meat too. And that usually ground meat is a little bit easier to digest because it's pretty much already chewed up. But for some reason, carnivore just does not work well for me. It just causes a lot of bloat, a lot of gastric issues. And that's kind of what I was talking about before. Like I've had to kind of like make twists and turns and figuring out what really works well for me. And that's one thing that does not, which is unfortunate. But I think a lot of it also has to do with just putting in a little bit more food that is easier to digest. I have eggs every single day, and yogurt is a big thing that I have as well too. And those things are super, super easy to digest. They're still an animal based, and that's I love about it. But for some reason, just straight up meat is not my best friend.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, as infinitely frustrating as it is in this world, to say like everybody's different, you might have to change things up a little bit differently. So frustrating sometimes to not hear that one diet will fix everybody's problems, but it always ends up being true. I mean, we just hosted our mutual friend Jonathan Shane on the show, and he gave a wonderful presentation, which I believe you were there, but I believe that was one of the discussions where Rigel was climbing around everywhere. So I don't know
Yes.
how much you were able to pay attention, but his presentation was like, here's what fat is and what it does, and when you need enough, here's protein, here's what it is and what it does, and if you've gotten enough. And the question around carbohydrates: do you need carbohydrates? You don't need them. Will it help you? Maybe. And he's got a great line of thinking around adding in carbohydrates to help people who don't tolerate meat only animal diets, and it makes a lot of sense. And so we kind of have to be really pragmatic and really test things out for different people, because not one thing is going to work for everybody.
Yep, I totally agree with that.
Well, you are a woman and you've coached lots of women. And so I really wanted to ask you about women's health and ketogenic diets long term. Do you believe that a ketogenic diet would be safe and effective for a female to do early in their year where they're still having cycles? Can they do that long term, or is that not necessarily a viable option for most women?
In my personal opinion, I think it is totally viable. I think it is totally doable. Like I said, I've been doing keto for 7 years. I'm not the type of person that will stray off and go have like carb ups and carb loading and all the things. Not that you can't. But if you wanted to do a straight ketogenic diet, I am all for that. Been doing it for 7 years. Did it when I was trying to get pregnant. Did it all the way through my pregnancy, did it postpartum. I mean, the whole thing. So in relation to how does it affect your hormones, or can it be helpful for hormones? I 100% think it can. And a lot of people with PCOS and other hormonal issues, even thyroid issues, they find a lot of success doing keto. And I think a lot of people too, with not knowing if they should do keto long term with hormones as well, or wanting to have some sort of like carb cycling or something like that, which again is not a bad thing. You're welcome to do whatever you want. But a lot of people will also agree that eating more calories on a strict ketogenic diet will do the same thing as a carb up or a carb refeed or something like that. It can have the same benefits, but a lot of women are too afraid to eat more calories that they end up saying like, well, let me just eat something different. Let me do this instead. Let me do that instead. And a lot of the things that a lot of success that you can find is actually by eating more.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was going to be my next question, actually, is where do most women kind of run into issues? And that it occurs to me that would be the number one thing, that most women are just simply not eating nearly enough, which can be a real challenge, practically and psychologically. How are you able to help women to eat more calories? Are you trying to add meals, or shorten kind of the fasting windows so they're not fasting quite as much? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, it really depends on the individual. I had one client who was literally fasting more days than they were eating. And I told her, I'm like, you are going to starve yourself. Like, you are not losing weight at this point because your body is in starvation and it's trying to hold on to every single thing that you're eating. So at that point, I said, we're not going to do any more fasting. You can do, whatever, a daily fast of, when you're sleeping to when you have your morning coffee or whatever. But we're not going to do any more 24 plus hour fasting. And she started eating every single day. and we started slowly increasing our calories, which, mind you, was so low. It was so low. But we started increasing, and we eventually got her well above 2,000 calories a day. And the entire time she was losing weight. And it's like, this is what I'm telling you. You're finally giving your body what it needs, and it can actually relax. It can get out of this fight or flight mode. It can just finally say, okay, she's feeding me. And now I can let go of some of this stuff. I can let go of some of the stress. And women, I mean, men and women both, but there's a lot of stresses that come with, being a wife, being a mom, being a business owner, being a employee of someone, church groups, whatever it is that you have going on there, your plate gets really full. And when your plate is full, even mentally or emotionally, that wears on your body. So if you're wearing on your body constantly, then you're adding on the stress of fasting too much or eating too little. That is an added stress. So you're just kind of putting your body in this crazy stressed out mode where you're just really overdoing it. And then a lot of people think like, I'm just going to work it off. I'm just going to go to the gym, do a bunch of cardio, or even like lifting weights or whatever. And they're still not eating enough. And they're wondering why is my composition not changing? Why am I not getting this toned look that I'm going for? And it's because you're not eating enough. You have to eat enough to even build muscle or not waste away or use your own muscle as energy and things like that. So
yeah. And this is where it's got to be super helpful that you are partnered up with Robert, who is somebody I would consider is probably the expert in reverse dieting. Can you explain what a reverse diet is?
Yeah. So reverse dieting is really just slowly increasing your calories over an extended period of time. A lot of the people that come to us are under eating significantly. And so what we do with them is it's really hard to convince someone you need to eat some more, because usually they're coming to you because they want to lose weight. And you kind of have to explain to them like, hey, we're going to slowly increase your calories. Generally speaking, it's going to be proteins and fats that we're going to slowly increase over time. You may gain a couple pounds, but then there's going to come a point where your body's going to finally find this happy medium, and we can start losing weight. We can start feeling better, all of those things. So really it is just like a slow increase of calories. And that the reverse diet is huge in the bodybuilding world because people diet down for competitions and then they reverse diet back into, their regular standard life. But it's finally coming into the world of everyone else. Some people think that's a bad thing. Some people like us think it's a wonderful thing, because people out in the real world, they diet and diet and diet until they're eating under 1,000 calories a day. And they're just wondering, what do I do next? I'm hardly eating anything as it is. Where do I go? So that's where we're trying to fill in the gaps and let people know, like, you can't eat more, feel better, and lose weight. And yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mentioned this a lot on the show, but I spent over a decade working on a metabolic cart where I could measure people's metabolic rates. And I would see that way more frequently than I would see, the people who were doing intermittent fasting or doing ketogenic diets, where their metabolic rates were several hundred calories higher than what they should have been. People doing chronic diets had their metabolic rate suppressed by hundreds of calories lower than what it should have been. So if you are a listener, if you are burning lots of calories and doing hard workouts and you're not eating very much, and you start to feel cold and have lots of cravings, and you're storing fat around the midsection, you can even literally take your temperature. If your temperature is running less than a normal human's temperature, your metabolic rate is coming down. And this is a really nice way to literally reverse out of it and build up the metabolic rate. Why not teach yourself to just burn more calories all the time? It's amazing.
Yep, absolutely. And you feel so much better. Like, who doesn't like a full belly? And to feel like you have energy, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, totally, much better than the contrast. Okay, so what about, you mentioned carb cycling, and again, we talked to Jonathan Shane about this. I love his approach when he is talking about reintroducing carbs. We're not talking 400 grams of carbohydrates a day in the form of cake. He's talking about 40 grams, 50 grams, 60 grams, add 10, per week kind of a thing. And it's whole kind of carbohydrate options. So in your opinion, when does carb cycling become a good option for your female clients?
I don't implement carb cycling or increasing carbs. I do have some people that are like, I like to do this to lose weight. And then eventually I'd like to, increase my carb intake back up. blah, blah, blah. And I have helped some people implement that back in what kinds of food to implement. But because I have been like in keto all the time, that's what I do. I really find that is my niche. And I would rather send them to someone like Jonathan and say, hey, this person excels in this area of increasing back up, watching to make sure everything is processing right and going well, and your hormones are balanced and all these things. I'm going to send you over to that person. And I am let's get you keto adapted. Let's get you doing what you want to do. And then if you want to go be metabolically flexible, or if you want to go do carb cycling or whatever, that's going to be your next step. And I really feel like putting that off onto someone else is going to be the most helpful for my clients, just so that they can find like, Crystal is solid here, then I go to the next person, and then this person is solid here. And we can kind of figure out, the mode of how we want things to progress.
Yeah, that's very smart. Let's see. So I totally forgot my question.
You're good.
Time step and edit this. Okay, so I love that approach of sending out to other experts who really do more of that kind of thing. I think that's a really good approach. As you're also working with women, what about the taste for meat and protein, in particular red meat? Is that something that's pretty challenging for a lot of women?
I have not found that. There are a few people here and there. I actually used to be that way. I didn't like red meat. I didn't think I liked steak. I think I just hadn't had it cooked right. But that's not usually the issue that I see, actually. It is just a lot of, they think that they should be eating a lot more vegetables and salads and things like that. So it's just kind of the transition of helping them to understand like it's okay to eat more red meats or meats in general, but not so much that they don't have the taste for it.
Okay, gotcha. It seems to be something that changes over time too. Like maybe in the beginning, chicken, turkey, like fine, you might not like
Yeah.
the red meat, or the texture might be a little bit weird, but over time, it seems like most women start to gravitate more towards a steak, and the cooking of the steak is probably exactly why. That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get back to your personal story and your pregnancy, I did want to ask you also about the workouts. How are you changing the way that women are thinking about their own personal workouts?
Yeah. So workout. So for me, I like to implement a lot of resistance training, and not that cardio is bad or any Pilates or whatever. I just know resistance training has a ton of benefits, and it's really helped me in my life. I started weight training at the same time I started keto, or within a month or two. And those two together have really changed my life and just helped me a ton. And although some of the different types of workouts have changed, it's always been resistance training. So trying to help women to feel a little bit more empowered to lift the weights, even if it's bands, or just starting with body weight resistance and things like that. I think that is been so helpful. And it feels like it gives them more confidence. It gives them the ability to say, like, I can actually like move the stuff that I've never been able to move before. My sister-in-law is one of those. She was just like, I am strong. And it's just like the normal farm tasks are now not as heavy or not as hard to handle. But really, I think a lot of it is mentally getting over I don't have to do loads of cardio. I don't have to do loads of one thing or the other. But knowing that resistance training is so beneficial for everyone, but especially women with bone density, just staying healthy in general. We lose so much muscle as we get older and older, a longevity of life, things like that. It's just so important to have lean mass that I think helping them to understand that is the thing that's going to help them to feel better. They're going to be able to burn more calories just on a day-to-day basis. They'll be able to eat a little bit more. You usually have a little bit more energy after you've done some resistance training as well. So the resistance training is really where I stick to things. And then we also like implement a little bit of cardio and things like that to just keep up with, heart health and all of that. But then a big thing is if someone comes to me brand new and they're like, I hate exercising, I say, let's start with something you do like. And if that's walking your dog or going to the park with your kid, we're just going to start with those steps. And then it's going to get progressively more and more and more until the point where you're doing exercise and you don't feel like you are. And then we kind of just like add on to that. But I feel like a lot of people come to me and they're like, I'm ready to just change. And then that's what we do. We're like, okay, let's get into a workout routine. Let's get a gym membership. Let's, whatever. I love it.
Yeah. I think people have the idea that the suckiness of going to a gym is always, or doing workouts or whatever it is always going to be kind of the same. And you don't realize that today might be the suckiest it's ever going to be. And it might be a little better tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Like it will get better. You will get rewarded. You will feel really good, like you're talking about. And you mentioned bands and you mentioned body weight exercises. I'm just curious, like, did you have the same kind of change of mind during the pandemic about what is truly necessary for resistance training? Like I would have said 3 years ago that you need access to a full gym and lots of different equipment and different modalities to be able to get good results. Has your opinion changed on that after the pandemic?
I think I started to change right before the pandemic, and we were sent a set of bands, and Robert and I were traveling for conferences and we're like, let's just do these band workouts, I guess. And then we were like, these are hard. Why are these so hard? And then through the pandemic, so many people were doing body weight stuff. So many people were doing bands. So many people were just like doing stuff. Like they were tired of being cooped up and they started doing, or they took it as their opportunity to just transform. And it's like, whoa, you really can make moves just by adding a little bit of resistance to your life, to your workouts, body weight, bands, whatever you choose. But yeah, you are right. Like through the pandemic, so many people did so well that I think it pushed the idea that like, yeah, bands are awesome.
Yeah. No, they're great. What a lot of people don't consider too with bands is the resistance is progressive,
Yes,
meaning
it is.
the harder you push it or pull it, the harder it's pulling back at you. So
Yeah.
if you were to think like, let's think of, I think of this a good example, a deadlift. If I'm doing a barbell deadlift from the ground, I'm going to bend over. My back is going to be in a compromised position. And that barbell is always going to be the same weight. It's, if I load 245 plates on there, it's 135 at the bottom. It could be 135 at the top where I have the most advantage. A band is not like that. A band can be essentially non-loaded when I'm in that position and progressively getting harder as I'm gaining a mechanical advantage. And thus it's way safer to use. And you can get a great workout if you have a strong enough band.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, getting back to you. Let's talk about the run up to your pregnancy. You talked about planning and how important that was for the two of you. What were you planning as far as your own health or fitness going into this pregnancy?
Yeah. So we had a good idea of like when we wanted to start trying. So I started taking a prenatal and like all of the, supplements and things about a year before we actually started before we wanted to start getting pregnant, because it really does take time for your body to kind of like catch up. If you're under on any minerals or vitamins or whatever, it can take your body some time. So usually it's suggested that you start that prenatal vitamin a year or so before. I also started implementing a lot more like liver and organ meats. I just would blend it up. I hate organ meats. So I would blend it up with my ground beef and just cook it that way. I put it in chili a lot of the time. So I really wanted to implement a lot of that. Just bone broth, eggs, just really nutrient dense foods so that my body was ready and fueled in like, let's make a baby kind of mode. And I stopped drinking alcohol. We didn't ever really drink that much anyways, but we would have some like maybe a drink on the weekend or whatever. I stopped drinking a couple months before. I stopped drinking caffeine of any sort. Really just cut out anything that was not necessary in my life because I thought whatever I am ingesting is now going to go to this baby. And I don't want them to have those things. And a lot of people, even caffeine, they're like, oh, caffeine, they don't say, they say it doesn't really get to the baby or even when breastfeeding. But to me, it's like, I really don't need that stimulant, and whatever might get to my child, they don't need it either. So I really just kind of went all in and said, we don't need any of this stuff. So that's pretty much what I did nutrition wise leading up to that. And then my workouts, I just kept doing the same thing.
Okay. I've heard that before. That's it was recommended to just continue doing what you were already doing before. That doesn't really need to change unless it's like something super high intensity. And
Mhm.
I've heard you comment on this on another podcast. I've heard you say that alcohol and caffeine were not necessarily things that you even wanted to bring back. Like once they were gone, you didn't really miss them. Is that still true today?
Yeah. So I have not had any alcohol. I am still breastfeeding my son. And so that's just like it's just a no-go for me. But to each their own, but for myself and my body and my son, I just didn't want any. And caffeine, I have had it, I think twice now. One, I tried with a coffee. They gave me, I ordered it. I ordered a decaf. They gave me caffeine. I was like, let's just see how this goes. It went totally fine. I definitely felt like I was hyper as all get out. And I really tried to like think, am I being crazy or am I not? But Robert's like, I can tell you're feeling it. So, and then the second time I had it, I've been training for powerlifting here recently. And I had a like kind of like false meet. Like I was really just trying to hit my 1 rep maxes. So I had a little bit of a pre-workout that day, which had a little bit of caffeine in it. But other than that, I've just had those 2 days and I really don't want to bring it back like on a regular basis, but like on occasion, I wouldn't mind having like a little bit of caffeine here and there.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Now, as you became pregnant, what changed in your diet then? Did you have to make any adjustments?
Yeah. So first trimester, it's always a little bit rocky. You never know what you're going to get there. A lot of people, a lot of women get meat aversions, and I was one of those lucky few. And it was just not fun because like meat is the best thing I could give my body and my baby right now, and you just feel like you cannot get it in. So I did a lot of like chaffles, which have like eggs and cheese in it. You can also just do like eggs and meat and put it in the waffle iron as well, and it doesn't taste like meat, which is a wonderful sneaky way of getting it in. And then I did a lot of chili too, which obviously I didn't put beans or anything in it, but it was a lot easier to get in the meat in like a chili form. So things like that. I did try to keep in the organs throughout my pregnancy because I just know that those are so nutrient dense and so helpful. And then I did eat a little bit more fresh vegetables and a little bit of berries like in the first part of my pregnancy because it was hot outside, first of all. And I got a little bit of morning sickness for just a few weeks there. But that was really helpful for me to kind of like keep things at bay. You are almost constantly snacking, which is a weird thing because usually on keto, you're just like having meals. But to keep that morning sickness away, you kind of constantly just keep a little bit of something with you, like a little something to snack on. Even I had something right by my bed so that when I woke up first thing in the morning, I would just have a bite of it and it would help to kind of ease my stomach. So the first trimester was a little rocky there for a few weeks. But then after that, it was just like smooth sailing. The whole time I was pregnant, I didn't like my max of carbs was about 35 grams. Same thing postpartum, 35 grams is about what I would stay at or below. And that was really like, I found that was really sustainable for me.
Yeah, wow. What was happening with your calorie intake? Was that changing by much? You kind of hear the story of like, oh, I'm eating for two, and so eating double the amount. Yeah, how many more calories were you consuming during your pregnancy?
So I'm going to try to remember what I was having before I got pregnant. I'm pretty sure it was between like 23 and 2,500 calories a day. So I was already eating plenty of food. And that's what I'm saying. Like I love to fuel my women. So that was like my pretty well like day to day. And then as my pregnancy went on, I was starting to eat a little bit more and more. So I think the average for me was between like 28 and 3,200. And I did increase quite a bit. I mean, if you think from 23 to 2,500 calories up to 32, but it wasn't consistent. I wasn't eating like 3,200 calories every single day. It was like one day I might have been a little extra hungry. So I had a little bit of extra food. The next day I may have had 2,800 calories and it was totally fine then too. Um,
Gotcha.
so it was definitely several hundred calories of an increase, but it was also gradually over time as well.
Hmm. Did you have any cravings for anything? I've heard a lot of women say that during their pregnancy, they have higher sugar cravings or, again, like sweets and things like that. And I think that is really dependent on the diet. Is that anything that you experienced?
I did not experience that at all. And I thought it was so weird. I was like, when are these cravings going to come along? And none of them, it did not happen. And I do think a lot of that has to do with mineral and vitamin deficiencies as well. Like when people start to crave certain things, a lot of people crave pickles, people electrolytes. That's what you need when you're craving a pickle. So just things like that. I feel like if you're fueling your body properly, most of those cravings are probably going to go away. I would say the thing for me was mostly just in that first trimester wanting something cold and not hot. That was kind of like my thing. But other than that, it was no cravings, so which is so weird.
Yeah, interesting. And the third trimester was about the same.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I mean, it's weird because now it's like it's been a year and I feel like I might forget things, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, third trimester, I honestly felt really great. I did not feel like I was about to have a baby. People start to feel like a little bit more miserable in the last trimester, but I felt really great. Kept everything pretty smooth sailing. I did incorporate like I started making these like electrolyte popsicles, and those are really helpful, but it was more like I could use electrolytes and it's hot outside. So here we go.
That's great. Okay, we're going to get to the birth itself here in a little bit, since that was such an interesting and unique experience. But before we do that, we're going to kind of reverse things a little bit. What about afterwards? Baby Rigel's here. How did your diet change as you were kind of adjusting back to normal, but still breastfeeding?
So that was kind of the point where it was like, should I eat less because he's not inside? Should I eat more? And they actually say you burn more calories breastfeeding than you do when you're pregnant, which is interesting. But so my calories have stayed about the same for quite some time. There was a point where I thought, oh my gosh, I need to like start doing something to lose weight. And then I remembered to myself that I promised myself that I would not do the diet culture bounce back body type thing because I don't think that that's usually healthy. And a lot of times it makes the mom's milk supply dip, and then therefore the baby stops feeding as much, and then the breastfeeding journey ends earlier. And that's not always the case, but for a lot of people, I find that that is the case. And I wanted to have a longer breastfeeding journey because it's beneficial for him. It's also beneficial for the mom. So really, I've been just keeping my calories up. I've been eating a lot and a lot of meat, a lot of organs, lots of probably less organs now that he's not inside, just because I don't love them in the first place. But I still try to implement them in my ground meat anytime I have it. And then, yeah, but pretty much everything's stayed the same as far as nutrition goes.
Okay, amazing. Now, okay, some women can't breastfeed. That is a
Yeah.
totally different thing that we're going to talk about. I am hearing stories of more women choosing from the beginning, going into a pregnancy, knowing that they won't try, they're not going to do it. Why? Can you please explain to our listeners why that would be a very, very bad idea, and why you and Robert decided from the jump that you were going to do breastfeeding?
Um, Nothing is equal to breast milk. And I will say, like, this is a very touchy subject, like very, very touchy subject. I'm not here to judge anyone, but breast milk is so important. Like, we were literally made to produce it because it is everything that our child needs. When your baby latches on, their body actually sends signals to your body that tells them exactly what they need, or tells you exactly what their body needs. It'll produce the carbs it needs, the fat, the proteins, the electrolytes, anything that your baby needs. Sickness, if they start to get sick, the baby's saliva on your body will tell your body exactly how to feed that child. And I find that that's so important. There is zero formula out there that is equal to breast milk. And I know that there are a lot of people that can't or choose not to, but it is so important. And also it has benefits for mom. It really, really does. Like, women who breastfeed actually have a lower chance of having breast cancer in the future. The longer you breastfeed, the lower your chances are, which is just Awesome. I mean, there's benefits for everyone. There can be challenges to breastfeeding. And so I understand why a lot of people don't, but there's so many more benefits to breastfeeding than the challenges, in my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. That was very well explained. And that says nothing about the atrocities that some of these formula companies have done in the past. The stories of everything that's happened in third world countries where people are watering down the formula to make it last longer, which is fatal. You hear the stories of the companies that would hire women that work for the formula companies that would hang out in nurses' outfits in the hospital and try to give out samples and everything. And most people don't consider, why is the nursery nowhere near where the birthing rooms are? And a big part of that is formula companies. They help get into the design of hospitals to change that so that there is a separation. And it isn't like if you can get a baby away from a mom for like a day, the breast milk stops.
Yeah, the supply can definitely go down, and you can increase it back up, and you can also pump to kind of keep things going. But if you keep that baby away, your body is not going to respond as well to a pump. It's not going to respond as well to hand manipulation and things like that. It's just not going to. You need that mother-child connection. And there are some issues where it's like the child does need to be away. But I have heard some amazing stories of moms who just are like, my kid's in the NICU and they will be for months, and I'm going to do this, and they make it work because that's something that they were adamant about, and it helps their children to overcome whatever sickness that they're going through or whatever, struggles that they're also dealing with. So,
Yeah, amazing. Just like everything else in life, right? Like if we're inventing a solution for a problem that we created, you should probably think about that and go back to what we've done as a species for millions of years and what other animals do and try to replicate that. Okay, so let's go to the birth itself. And I have to preface this by saying, I told Scott Mazinski this. Scott Mazinski hosted me on his podcast recently where we talked about KetoCon, and he asked me what some of my favorite presentations were. And I mentioned Robert's as one of my top 2 or 3 favorite presentations. And it's funny because even at KetoCon, it wasn't necessarily about keto diets. It wasn't necessarily about nutrition at all. But he told the story of the birth and how everything went down. And he got emotional. I got emotional. Like it was a really amazing and very powerful talk. So can you tell us what happened with the birth and how things did not exactly go according to the plan that you guys had created?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably not going to say it the same way as Robert because he has just a way with words, but so we originally had planned a home birth. That was just something that I had on my heart for years that I really wanted to do. I wanted to be in my own element, in my own world, kind of. I wanted to have low lights. I wanted all of those things. I wanted to be in my comfort space. And so we had hired a midwife to do that home birth. And we had people on our side that were really great health experts. And in the state of Arkansas, when you pass 42 weeks, your midwife can make a decision on whether they want to postpone that for one more week or if they want to send you to the hospital. And I was not dilated. I was 42 weeks pregnant. I was not dilated. Nothing was happening. I was not feeling any pressure. We tried to do a membrane sweep, which I did not want a membrane sweep. I did not want any sort of any type of procedure. I wanted everything to happen naturally. But by that point, I was like, I don't want to have a baby in the hospital. So we tried a membrane sweep and like my body just did not respond. And she's like, I hate to say this, Crystal, but like, I think you need to go in and see if everything's good.
What is that? I've never heard of that membrane sweep.
So essentially there's like a mucus plug, which is built up when you get pregnant. And that's really, it's literally like a huge thick mucus plug that holds in your baby, the placenta, all of that kind of stuff. And that comes out. It's like when you start to go into labor, it's called a bloody show. And that's usually what comes out. It's a little bit of blood, mucus, and that's your mucus plug coming out. Well, when they do a membrane sweep, they're going around the lining of your cervix to try to break off of that mucus plug so that you can go ahead and start labor a little bit more naturally. But it's still an intervention of sorts.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah. So when we went into the hospital, because at that point she's like, I think you should go in. We just need to check, make sure everything's good, blah, blah, blah. So we went in, he was great. Size was wonderful. That's one thing that they worry about when they're 42 weeks pregnant. We tried to do the slowest form of intervention as possible because I really did not want to be induced. And so they started us on one that's called Cervidil. And I had to kind of fight for that because they really wanted to just start me on Pitocin. So they started me on what's called Cervidil, and that stayed in for 12 hours. And when they checked me, I was hardly dilated. So it was just like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So we did end up starting Pitocin. And that progressed a little bit, a little bit more and more and more over time. They do increase the amount that you're getting as well. And it was going okay. I was feeling good about things. Labor actually was feeling totally fine. But I did allow them to check me. You can tell them like, I don't want you to check me. And that's where they tell you like how many inches you're dilated and things like that. So I did allow them to check me. And a couple of people were like, pretty sure I feel the baby's face. And I feel its eyebrow. I feel its eye. And then at one point they felt his nose. And the only thing they should be feeling is the top of their head. So eventually my water broke. And that's the beginning of all the intense pain. And because he was misplaced in there, his head was pushed the wrong direction. It was face presentation posterior, and you can have a face presentation baby and give birth naturally anterior, but you cannot posterior. And that's just simply as a safety precaution for your baby, because as they come out, their head is tilted forward. They have a hard time getting their head through the bones of the pelvis and things like that. So it was like, we gotta go have surgery. You're gonna go have a surgery right now. And Robert and I were just like, what? And my midwife is standing there, and I really trusted her a lot. And she's like, we don't really have an option at this point. Like, it's one thing when they're face presentation, but it's also like he's posterior. So we just like had a moment, Robert and I together, and I could tell he was worried. Like, he was like, this is my wife and my child, and they're about to go into the surgery, and I don't know how it's going to end up. And I don't know what is going to happen. And I just kept saying like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. This is what was meant to happen. Like, things happened in a way that we got here for this reason, and it's going to be okay. And so we went into surgery. They took Robert away to get him all dressed up, and he came in like freaking out, making sure I was all good. And so I ended up having a C-section, which was the polar opposite of what I ever wanted. From home birth to C-section was not quite the transition I was hoping to make, but it took me a long time to actually get over the fact that I had a C-section. It took me a long time to actually even be able to want to look at my scar. Or tell the story. But I think I've gotten a lot of peace from it. And it's amazing how many women I've been able to connect with because of that story. And it's just, I don't know, it ended up being an awesome way to connect with people. And sometimes life just doesn't go the way it's planned. You can do literally everything to make sure that it's all perfect, and it still will not go. And that is okay. And you find alternatives and things like that. And really just in the hospital, we just had to advocate a lot for ourselves. Even delayed cord clamping, they were like, I can kind of maybe wait a minute or two. And I'm like, no, we're going to like actually wait the full time, So it's just, that is our story. It's an interesting one from start to finish, the opposite of whatever we wanted.
What an amazing epitome of your lives. Everything that the two of you have been able to overcome, both separate and together. Starting the companies, all the nights, I can't even imagine sleeping at the exact warehouse where you're making bars, to now get to the other side, have your beautiful son, have your beautiful new facility, which I believe my name is on there somewhere.
I'll have to find it and send you a picture.
Funny, yeah, please do. The brick by brick kind of promo you guys did was wonderful. And yeah, I see I see how happy Robert is and how happy you are. You guys were just so wonderful to meet in person. And yeah, we don't develop that unless we can figure out ways to overcome really difficult challenges that were unplanned. And
Mhm.
you're just, both of you are just such a wonderful example of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So worth
Yeah.
going through the hard things to connect with people for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's what you do, is connect with people, again, especially women. I really love this discussion. I heard recently somebody in the carnivore space say you probably can't do a carnivore diet while being pregnant. And I'm not sure if that's the case. And that certainly wasn't your experience. You weren't on a carnivore diet, but having the example of at least somebody doing, staying low carb, low carbohydrate, or slash ketogenic through the pregnancy, before, after the pregnancy, I think is a wonderful example of at least what is possible. And I think it's really cool that you did the research and were fairly comfortable that what you were doing was going to be safe and was going to provide the best life for your son.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think having a good support group as far as like who your medical team is really helpful. And that's the first thing I did when I actually met with my midwife. I said, I lift weights and I eat a ketogenic diet. Are you going to have an issue with that? And she's like, nope, that's great. She's like, you
Wow.
eat some meat. She's like, my biggest problem is with people who don't eat meat. And so I think like having that support behind me, knowing that she also advocates for what I'm doing, was like so awesome. So definitely pick your providers wisely.
That is fantastic advice. This has been such a wonderful conversation, Krista. Where can people go to find you and connect with you, you and your work? And then where can people go to find Robert as well?
So to find me, you can go to ladysavage.com. On Instagram, it's the.lady.savage. To find both of us on Facebook, it's going to be under Team Savage, and on YouTube, it is Live Savage. And then for Robert, you can find him at ketosavage.com or Keto Savage on Instagram.
That is excellent. We will link to all of that in the show notes. Crystal, thank you so very much for taking the time to come onto our show today. I'm glad Robert and Rigel are having a good time right now, but really glad you were able to recruit him for babysitting duty and be able to share your story. Like I said earlier, it's been so wonderful to follow along, and you guys have been so open and vulnerable with all of this information, and it helps. It really helps a lot of people, and I know it's going to help our listeners today. So thank you so very much for everything that you do, and thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.